Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. My name is Steve Green. I'm a customer success manager here at Eightfold, and I will go down the line here and let each of these individuals introduce themselves, a little bit about what your organization does, and about you.
Thank you. Lori Vickery. I'm the Director of Salaried Recruiting for Bimbo Bakeries. We're located, our Horsham office is our corporate office. We manufacture all of the breads and sweet goods that you probably know and love and have been raised on. And we're just really excited to be here. I've been with the organization about 9.5 years now and excited to be on the journey.
I'm Stacy Gramza from Foley Equipment. We are an authorized Caterpillar dealer in Kansas and Northwest Missouri. My role is the talent acquisition manager, so I handle all of the TA side of the business and the recruiting strategy for the organization.
All right, I am Michelle Fichtel. I'm also with Foley Equipment. I'm our Director of Organizational Development, and since she gave you a lot of information, I'm just going to give you numbers. We are currently in our 85th year of business, and being a Caterpillar dealer, this is actually Caterpillar's 100th year in business, so that will be important in some of the things we're discussing later.
Thank you, guys. So one of the things that both Foley and Bimbo have in common is that along with our talent acquisition product, they also handle all of their requisitions and offers from within Eightfold. And so to Rebecca's point, then thinking through how best to bring quality and speed across that entire TA process. So maybe we start here with Michelle and Foley. As you were thinking before moving onto Eightfold, what were some of those, kind of main challenges that you saw on both acquiring and then retaining the talent that you had?
Yeah, so in general, one of the things that's maybe fairly unique to us is our geographic location. We are landlocked. Both Stacy and I are based out of Wichita, Kansas. And so Dave was nice enough to present with us last year, and he said we were the sales pitch to get people to move to Kansas. Turns out it's a very small market for people willing to do that. So one of the things for us is just finding talent in that space and figuring out different ways to recapture that talent given the limited candidate pool that existed. So being 85 years in business, also looking at some of the processes that we do and recognizing that they might be slightly outdated and just figuring out how do we get better and more efficient about the things that we're doing. How do we re-engage the talent that we have and make sure that we have transparency across all our processes so that given that we do already have a limited pool to draw from, we definitely want to have extra emphasis on retaining the key talent once we bring them into our organization.
And Lori, you all had some similarities between a unique mix, frontline workers alongside some of your full-time team, and you even mentioned some of the process pain that was probably similar to where Foley was at the same time. As you looked at, okay, what do we need if we're looking to solve those things? What were some of the key markers that you were looking for as you explored vendor options?
Yeah, so I think we were just the opposite of you. You were landlocked in one location. Our organization is a little bit more complex in that we're across the whole U.S. So we have baking facilities, sales centers, distribution centers that we need to hire for. Many of the locations that we do hire for, they're tough to fill. They're tough to fill, and we have tough to fill roles when we talk about, maintenance technicians in those rural locations. So it was really about being able to navigate how can we solve for all of the locations that are having those pain points. When we think about time to fill, that was obviously something that we looked very heavily at. How can we reduce that time to fill? Because if we don't have, our associates in roles, we're not able to produce and manufacture the goods to go out to the business.
Yeah, absolutely. The part of that equation was also being able to take the talent network that you had and be able to leverage that, which you all also mentioned through proactive campaigns. How is that consideration of being able to actually reach out in all of those various opportunities factored into what you're thinking as well?
Yeah, so I think for us, a big opportunity was really to how you re-engage that talent, right? Because we had a pretty large talent network to begin with, but it's keeping those candidates engaged that they may not be hired today, but they may be hired later for a different role. So the campaigns and events has been something that we've launched, since we went live. It's been very beneficial when you talk about those rural areas or those niche roles to fill. So it's really really just about, again, capturing your candidates when they're coming to your website. They may just be interested in you as an organization. They may not necessarily be looking for a job today, but how do you keep them, engaged throughout their process and their journey to maybe join the organization at a later date?
Yeah. For you all at Foley, being in that Caterpillar dealership network, we're one of, if not one of the first that we're really pushing on utilizing AI throughout the hiring experience. And so where did that, as you were thinking of what we want to do, what needs to happen with our talent acquisition process, why was AI something that you guys were willing to push into and explore and use?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do just want to comment on this really quickly. Our digital twin is not yet available, so all of us actually have our digital twins here in the form of old-fashioned notes. So when we're looking at AI and we think about, some of the speakers this morning wonderfully set this up, and you think about the AI maturity model and where we want to be on that. And it's one of those things I remember 2 years ago, which isn't that long ago, but it was surprising. I remember being at a conference and they were really focused on fear. AI was definitely coming to get all of us. It was going to take all our jobs. And we have a very different mindset. So on that maturity model, we weren't necessarily wanting to be first to market in everything. We wanted to be very intentional and make sure that we're making good choices and that it is still very much human first and human focused. I also loved listening to Deloitte this morning and piggybacking on what they shared, the idea that yes, there's gains, right? We wanted to look at how do we improve efficiency, but not just from a cost savings, but really balancing that idea of how do we make good experiences, employee experiences, candidate experiences, customer experiences, and keeping that human first. And so our focus was, where does it make sense, knowing that we believe AI is inevitable, how do we get involved and make sure that we're making ethical decisions using tools and having partners that we feel confident that the right things are happening with the data so that it will help enable our employees and our decision making so that we can continue to have really great people-led organizations and do that in an efficient way, but not solely to drive cost cutting, but truly to enable all those things that we talked about this morning too, that AI won't replace. We want to drive increased ingenuity and have these really wonderful human experiences. And that's, I don't know that directly answered it, but that's where we wanted to be on the AI bandwagon.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I think even what you mentioned, Lori, about being able to do campaigns and events and re-engage that talent is being able to do that at scale. There's going to be processes that you can actually leverage that increase the ability to reach out, the expediency with which you can do that, whereas then you give the team the opportunity to do more of that human interaction as well. From your standpoint, bringing AI into your HR processes, were there any challenges? Were there any clear opportunities that you were also chasing?
Yeah, so I think very similar. AI is inevitable. It's out there. Many organizations are utilizing AI. So for us, it was about how can we identify parts of the process that you can leverage AI to increase your efficiency and drive productivity with your recruiters. So I think that we've done a pretty good job of identifying that in the beginning, but things change, right? And you identify new things as you go. So I think it's really about honing in on what you know today, where you have those gaps in terms of efficiency, and then really looking at, what AI can do in terms of, you think about workflow automation. How can you lift that pain point from the recruiters to, again, reduce your time to fill and fill your jobs in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Michelle, as you guys came to Eightfold initially, a lot of it came from your side of the house on what are we doing with skills across the talent lifecycle for employees as well. But that skills-based transformation, obviously that's not just intellectual, actually then trying to drive that into your TA processes, trying to drive that into the way you're thinking about making that real. What were some of maybe the key considerations of how you wanted to message that and what you were looking for to come out of that?
Yeah, following up on Casey, who was speaking before us, really got excited. It turns out your employees want to grow. So we were really excited to have this partner with Eightfold where we could create an internal talent marketplace that really helps promote transparency in all our processes and helps emphasize taking ownership of your career development in that full life cycle journey. It's helping equip our hiring managers. They're amazing, and of course, they know what good looks like, and it's really hard starting with the recruiter. Yes, but could you help us identify what that is also so we can be bringing better candidates to you? So starting with entry and identifying talent, and then maybe internally, hey, do we have where we can reskill, upskill, re-engineer what's going on internally? We might already have that right person that's here. So it's that whole life cycle. It's helping have transparency across our processes and making sure that, skills, I think Casey also talked about that, right? Like, what does skills mean and how's that different from competency models? And just really having tools that enable better conversations across the board where we're giving hiring managers, employees, the organization candidates coming in, better transparency about not just where you start, but what does that journey look like throughout the full life cycle, and how do we help? Obviously, being on the L&D side, I'm very passionate about making sure that we're providing the resources so that no one is stagnant in their career, that we can continue to help grow and figure out when we prepare for the future and that rapidly changing life cycle, right? 6 months, we need to know all these things. How are we getting ahead of that and really being a business partner in helping the individual and the business units to be ready for the things that will differentiate us with our customers?
Yeah. Laura, you had even mentioned that it's not flipping a switch, right? So the rubber meets the road as you have to rewire the process. And so while the technology might be ready to go, that doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be used that way. What have you seen on that change management cycle with your teams?
So, I think it starts with, you need to get the buy-in of your organization. You have to meet your organization where they're at. So, we started with education, getting that stakeholder buy-in, and then it's really about driving the change, right? Because the change management piece is huge. So, we had a really robust, communication plan that we were going to start this journey. We involved, cross-functional leaders to be participating in the build, the design, and even the UAT, because you really, again, there's, all different functions throughout our organization. So we wanted to hear what everybody needed, right? Because again, you have to meet everybody where they're at. It's not a flip of the switch. And it's okay to take a step back and say, we need to regroup, because, I think sometimes we plan, and then you get into the process and maybe things change because your organization is changing or you've identified things that you didn't think of. So I think you really have to be, able to pivot and just meet your organization where they are.
Stacy, let's get you in here on some of the things that you've seen from a candidate experience standpoint as you're working with your recruiting team and seeing how candidates are responding to an entirely new experience with Eightfold's career site and on through the acquisition process. What have you seen on that side of things?
Yeah, I think our candidate experience has improved greatly, actually. The application process is a lot better. The PCS, or the personalized career site, we can just track on the analytics, like how many people are using that. The entire flow is just a lot easier. They have a lot more visibility and transparency. So speaking earlier to that transparency piece is so important, not only for your internal employees, but for your external candidates as well. Not only that, but to kind of piggyback on what Lori said too, with the talent pool and the talent network, before in our old system, and it's partly user error, 100%, but, we would get all these people joining our talent pool, and they were just sitting there. And like no one was ever going back and engaging with them. So I'm like, here are like these strong leads. They already sought us out. They already know who we are. We don't have to reintroduce them to the brand or anything. They're interested in us. And we were just letting them sit there and waste away and disappear. And it was such a frustrating process because we didn't have an easy way to engage with them. But with the Eightfold platform, actually, with it automatically pulling up leads from our talent network based on match score and things like that, we can re-engage with those candidates. Their campaign tools and the events tools, super easy to use and user-friendly. So we're able to then go and reach out to those people, plus automatically, right? And that's a great sales pitch for us, too, with our candidate pool is, hey, you guys can set up your profile and join. And what that does is actually, if you're really qualified for a job, it kind of puts you at the top of the list. And so it helps take away some of the unknowing, right? Like it's very mysterious when you apply for a job because you're like, yeah, I read the description, but what does this mean? Am I qualified? I don't really know. I feel like I am, but maybe we're not aligned. Whereas in Eightfold, you can, it is up to the candidate how much they want to commit to it. But then, yeah, they can go ahead and upload their profile. They can pick their skills. They can see the job matching. And then the recruiter also can see that. And so even if there are people that didn't apply, we can be proactive and reach out to them and say, hey, we actually think you might be a really great match. And that has actually been probably one of the best things that we've gained from Eightfold is that candidate communication and inviting, and the response rate has been really, really positive, much higher than most other like just standard generic marketing campaigns.
Yeah, I think utilizing that talent network in the way that you described is certainly both a huge opportunity and a large shift in recruiting process and particularly sourcing processes as you're thinking about what are we actually asking our teams to do. Lori, as your team is now creating and approving requisitions in the same system as then moving them through the pipeline and onto offer, what are some of the experience feedback notes that you've gotten from your team on how the recruiters are experiencing that?
Sure. So, we were a little bit complex because when we initially launched Eightfold, we did it in a pronged approach. So we started with PCS, then we went on to the CRM, and now finally talent tracking, which we're really excited about. So it's been really positive. The ease of use, the recruiters are really excited about. They're now coming with new ideas on how, again, we can simplify the process. We can automate the process. When we think about, I'll use something as simple as an internal candidate check. So we have a little over 21,000 associates. A lot of internal associates apply for our jobs. Right now, it's a manual process. So the internal candidate applies for the job. The recruiter sends an email to their current manager to do that check. It's a lengthy process. There's a lot of chase down. So they're actually coming with ideas of how can we automate this, that when an internal associate applies for a job, there's an email generated from the system, and you reduce that. So it's been really great. We've had also a lot of fun, I think, with our pronged approach. One of my recruiting managers created these Let's Meet in the Sandbox. So when we were doing UAT testing, they had a lot of fun with it. So it's been really positive, and it's good to see because when you're implementing a change this big, you want the buy-in of your recruiting teams because they're going to spend the most time in the system. So it's been great. And I think from a candidate experience as well, just the ease of use, the simplified process, really positive feedback that they're actually sharing with the recruiters and the hiring teams.
The group that, for better for worse, you have the least control over is that hiring manager group, right? Of what does this actually mean for them? One of the things that you have both mentioned is the opportunity to drive internal mobility, which is going to require some buy-in from that hiring manager group. Stacey, what has, as you have kind of thought about what that looks like at Foley generally from a cultural standpoint and what you guys push and lead and then how that is looking to enable, what are some of the things that you have tried to both message and help your teams understand?
It's been a really great tool for communicating with the hiring manager. So to Michelle's earlier point of, the manager is like, I'll know it when I see it. I got a great candidate. Like, I'll know them. Don't you worry. And whereas we're like, cool, that does not actually help you find a qualified candidate faster. It actually makes it so much harder. So what this has done with the role calibration and the rec calibration pieces is it has given them that dictionary, the language model to use with the hiring managers, where they can pull up in the calibration screen and review that in their intake call with the hiring manager and say, hey, here's what we're thinking this is. Does this sound right? Or tell me a little bit about the current skills of your team. Where are those gaps? Because we can actually then customize this specific posting and this specific role to meet and find those gaps on your team so that it will look a little bit different, but that's the beauty of the platform. And we can go through those, and it gives them that same language to review it. And then for internal candidates too, that's what's so key is that we also, I'm sure none of you have ever heard this before, where a candidate or even a current employee is just not the right fit for my team right now. And I'm like, cool, they're going to ask me what that means. So can you maybe expand on that? I'm like, yep, see, I just didn't feel it in my gut. They're not ready. And I'm like, Well, that's again, right? If we're trying to become that employer of choice, if we're trying to develop our employees and keep them engaged and keep them from leaving us to go somewhere else where they do feel valued and like they have opportunities, it's a very important conversation to have. So we're coaching a lot with our hiring managers of, no, we need to give them really constructive feedback. Here's, the different skills that they're lacking, and here's what the skills of the role requires. What kind of conversations can we have? Can we pull in training and development to go and create a plan for them? And if they really are, obviously they're a great fit for our organization or they wouldn't be here. And we don't want to lose them. So how do we upskill them to that conversation or to that next position? And that's where the skills listing and the calibrations come into play, really key for both external and internal candidates to keep people engaged and to have very open, transparent, and constructive conversations and feedback where just in general, we didn't have that framework, so we were lacking a little bit on that. But the hiring managers have responded really positively to it, actually. So as much as they are my favorite and my least favorite all at once, they have actually responded really, really well and have embraced that and understand respecting the employee in that way to give them that feedback that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. And Lori, as you mentioned, pronged approach and now live with talent tracking to be able to do the full cycle. You have already seen some really great outcomes there on the efficiency side and effectiveness. What does that look like for you guys?
So we've actually some big wins. We've been able to decrease our time to fill. If we look at January through April of last year versus January to April of this year, we've reduced our time to fill by 15%, which is huge. Again, really receiving positive feedback from the hiring team is because it's a one-stop shop for them. They can communicate with their recruiters. They can provide that interview feedback right in the tool versus sending a manual email in past. And I think that becomes really, really important because when we think about being able to be efficient and effective during the process, being able to have that one-stop shop is critical, right? We've also increased our talent network by 37%, which again is huge because when you think about candidates coming to your personalized career site, they may not be interested in a job today, but they may be interested in a job in the future. So I think overall, the feedback has been really positive across the board. But when we think about time to fill, the hiring managers get jazzed when they're filling the roles, 15% quicker than in past.
Yeah. And Michelle, you all now having talent tracking, talent acquisition, and also the TM piece as well as talent design. You guys are all the way across. But being able to take that skills data all the way from the candidate and bring it all the way into that employee life cycle and think through, okay, how do we actually utilize that? What are some of the wins there? And being able to take it from candidate all the way through to employee growth.
Yeah, I mentioned before, our employees, they want to grow, right? We did for our launch, kind of before we did a big change management campaign, we wanted to have user data in the system to help drive some of that. So we sent one email and did one company intranet post, and we had just shy of 80% of our employees go in and actively engage in the system, create profiles, half of those going through and starting and measuring and assessing their skill proficiencies. So huge buy-in and excitement. And so the wins that we're seeing is it is enabling those conversations on the TA side, and then that's transferring into using our development plans, having career discussions just across the board, giving us better language and providing tools for everyone to be more enabled to have more productive conversations around talent and taking ownership of what does development in our future look like.
Great. I'll wrap up here for sake of time, but I will say this. If you want to catch any of these folks afterwards, they are great discussion partners on all the things we mentioned, and also, I know Foley in particular and Bimbo as well, fantastic design partners for Eightfold. So as you consider what it looks like to actually work day in, day out with our product team, with our engineers, they've got plenty of experience on that as even design partners on some of the agentic AI tools that were announced today to be able to provide perspective on how you all are working that into your unique environments with workers who might not always be digital first in their actual workplaces, but also frontline, and then thinking through how that can work together. So appreciate your time. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.